episode, Leapfrog Your Career and Make 50% More Without Changing Professions. And it's brought to you by Everybody Up. Everybody Up provides experiential communication workshops on leadership, employee engagement, and team building. I would like to welcome everyone to the Association for Talent Development Austin Chapter podcast series, Humanity at Work, where we talk about how to bring humanity back to the workplace. Today's episode is all about how to increase your salary, and I am your host, Melissa Love. My guest today is known as the Career Passion Coach. She helps mid-career professionals increase their salary from 30 to 50% while finding jobs that they love. We all want that, right? She helps her clients make over their resumes, revise their LinkedIn profiles to attract more recruiters, and provides A to Z interviewing and salary negotiation. She is the author of not one, not two, but 3 books on career changing, including New Resume, New Career, featuring 50 real career change stories. Catherine is currently working on a business networking book called Connected. Please help me in welcoming Catherine Jewell. And please help me in welcoming Catherine Jewell. Catherine, thank you so much for being here today. Catherine is also part of the ATD leadership team that I serve on the board with. So I'm excited to talk to you today. I'm excited to talk about your passion for career coaching. And I know that you have a really amazing story about how somebody increased their value at the same company without doing some of the things that we would normally think about doing, is then having to scrape and fight and go to the boss for a raise. So can you tell our audience about that story for one of your clients?
Oh, I'd love to. And thanks for having me today. So this story is about a curriculum designer, a young man who had kind of come up through the training coordinator ranks and had graduated to curriculum design. He was taking a master's level course from the University of Texas in adult learning with a specialty in digital learning. And he was only making $68,000 as a curriculum designer. But when he finished his degree, he was so on fire about the idea of taking more digital learning and making that a real part of the learning and development at his company. And so he went to his boss with a proposal that they create a director of digital learning.
So he
and so
a whole new position for himself, yes, basically.
A whole new position for himself. And we went ahead and looked up, the learning director of digital learning job description and wrote one that was customized to his training, presented it to the boss. And then when HR got a hold of it, they priced the job at $110.
Wow.
Because that's what it's worth. And so he was able to get the job. So he went from 68 to 110, which is a 61% increase in pay. And on top of that, he was suddenly doing a job he truly loved.
Right. And it's all about, work is work, but we absolutely try to love some portion of what we do. And most of us hope that it's a larger portion than what we hate, because there's always going to be those tasks that are like, ugh, I got to do that today. And it's interesting that he was funding his own education, correct?
No, actually, the company had a very liberal education policy, so they were paying for his master's degree.
Wow, that's great. Well, when you can get into a company that will pay for your education, that's amazing. So do you think that, well, I have 2 questions. One is, like, from a manager's point of view, was that director position, so it was a brand new position, was his manager a director level already, or were they higher up?
Oh, even higher.
Okay.
I think his boss was actually like a vice presidential level.
Okay.
But he actually skipped over senior curriculum designer, or whatever the senior role was, and the training manager role. So he actually leapfrogged 2 two job levels
Right.
to get to that director role. And so it was quite a career move, huge.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and for some of us that have not worked for companies that will pay for extra education or advanced degrees, what do we do when maybe we feel like we're in a position where we're maybe devalued and or undervalued, and we're doing a lot more than what our normal job task that we came into the job and started the job 2 years ago was, and now it's evolved into something more because wow, they see this strength and that strength and this strength and that strength. And sure, we've gotten maybe some incremental increases over the years, but nothing that is, what we talk about in the 30 to 50% bracket. So if you don't have somebody or a company or the resources even on your own to pay for an advanced degree, how do you get ahead? How do you make that kind of increase? And is it possible?
Well, there's two things I like to suggest, and I'm really prejudiced about master's level work. I feel that sometimes master's degrees actually make you less employable.
Oh, really? Why so?
Well, because companies believe they're going to have to pay you more because you do have a master's degree. And what they really like to pay for is experience and the capability of doing the job. And so my prejudice is for certifications. And one of the coolest moves that you can make is to certify in some area that's kind of like off to the side of training and development. For example, I had one client who was training people in how to use Salesforce. And she got so excited about the potential of Salesforce that she started a certification program in Salesforce. Then she was able to launch a little sales consultancy business, helping people implement Salesforce into their companies. And after she had 2 or 3 of those projects under her belt, she actually was able to get a job as a Salesforce integrator. And so way back as a trainer, she was making in the 70s. As a Salesforce integrator, she was making about 115 to 125.
Oh, wow.
And all of that happened in about a 9-month period.
So are you suggesting that if I want to stay at the company I'm at, then I should probably get an advanced degree, hopefully paid for by the company? If I want to make a lot more money, I can maybe not change my profession, or maybe I have to, I don't know, or change industries. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out but if I love my company and they don't pay for education, how do I get more money? And so I'm just.
Unfortunately, the best raises I've ever seen from companies are in the 10 to 15 range.
10%.
And so I really am a proponent of changing jobs.
Okay.
And I think anyone who's been in the same job for more than 5 years is underpaid by definition.
Wow.
Because year after year, they come around and say, well, we can only give you a 3% bonus this year. We can only give you 5% this year. If you changed jobs, I always tell my clients, it isn't worth it to change jobs for less than 20 grand, because it is so much aggravation to change roles. And so if you want to get a substantial increase, you need to leave your company and take your newly branded self to another company who's going to have some more respect for that. Now, many times people actually go back to their original company at a much higher salary after they've taken this sabbatical,
right?
With another company that respects the experience that they've garnered.
Right. And I can speak from experience that I worked for the same company 3 different times, but obviously I had jobs in between those times. And that was really the only time I could get a substantial raise from that specific company. Because if I tried to go back to that boss with the same title, basically doing the same thing, but saying, I'm working really hard here, and I've taken on more clients, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. It just simply wasn't enough in the boss's mind to say, well, sure, I'll pay you $20,000 extra. But if I were to leave and then come back, and it's weird, and sometimes I wouldn't have to be gone for very long. And they're like, oh, they did this and they did that. And all of a sudden I have more value, which is a little bit disconcerting to me. That
it is disconcerting, but remember that you're dealing with an organization and they have rules about how much they can give you in raises. And so it really is worth a shot to take yourself out to the open market and see what you're worth there.
Right. And I think that also, when I think about advancement within the smaller type companies I worked for, were only like 150 people. So to really advance in a company, sometimes that meant I was leapfrogging over my own boss, which makes me a target. And it can make them feel less than. And that is something they're probably not going to be super encouraged to do either. So yeah, it's a difficult world that you really do have to use a lot of strategy to navigate that world of increases and how you're doing it. Yeah.
I agree. And your first loyalty is always to yourself and to your family, because companies are not loyal.
Right. Right.
People may be loyal. Your boss might be loyal to you, and then someday come in and say, I have to let you go.
Right.
I wouldn't do this if I didn't have to. And so remember that companies are not loyal. So you need to be loyal to yourself and to whatever your goals are.
Right.
And what's so exciting about getting that new role is, first of all, as trainers and learning and development people, we're all about learning. A new role is going to challenge you in so many ways. You are just going to grow, grow, grow. And you're going to get a lot of confidence from that move.
Right.
And so when you come back, if you decide to go back to the same company, you're not the same person. You have grown so much.
Right.
And so, it really is worth a shot. You mentioned changing professions. There are really just two kinds of career changes. You can change your position, or you can change your industry, or both.
Right.
And what I find is that most of the people in learning and development roles are so adaptable, and that they can easily change their position. For example, they can go from a curriculum designer to a software project integrator, because what they find is that most of their job is managing change, project management, and training people.
Right.
And they've already done all that.
Right.
And so in a case like that, you can actually change your profession, but you don't lose your love, which hopefully you have a first love for training and development.
Right. And you're right on the money as far as loyalty, because I tend to be a very loyal person to whatever I'm doing, and I give 1,000%. And again, the same company that I went to 3 times, probably stupidly, now that I look back at my career. But the first time I quit that position at that company, the boss, the president of the company, did not speak to me for the remaining 2 weeks, of work that I was doing. And then like a couple years later, he heard that I was maybe looking to make a change, and he called me and acted like nothing happened. And I was like, what? Because at this point I was like, he's so mad at me for leaving. Will he even give me a good review? or a good reference. And it's just people are weird, people are strange, people have egos, people communicate differently. It's just, it's a crazy, crazy world.
Well, you just have to remember that executives, top level executives, no matter how much money people make or whatever, we're all immature in some ways.
Right.
And we're all like a bunch of kids on a playground. And we make a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And hey, it's okay. You actually went through what I would call a corporate trauma. And I really think that most people who have lost a job or been pushed out or laid off have experienced a trauma.
Right.
And it takes a while to get your confidence back and get over that and realize it's not about me.
Right.
It is, obviously some of it is about you. There are some things that you could have done differently, but anybody can say that.
Right.
Most of the time, it really isn't about you.
Right. Well said. Well said. All right. Catherine, one of the other things is the strategies I was reading in one of your books is to, when you're at a company, to try to get more money is one way, is to consistently implement changes that affect many people. Talk me through that strategy and how it's done and why it matters.
I think so many times when we're given an assignment of executing a learning intervention of some kind, we can do two things as professionals. The one is just do it, talk with the SMEs and get it underway, get her done. But another thing we can do is push back to management and to say, hey, this little training that you're asking me to do is actually part of a larger change initiative. And to really do this right, we have to expand the audience that is going to be a part of this training, or we have to expand the training so that it covers more. So in other words, what I'm saying is, don't take all of your assignments at face value. Add the consulting, put on your consulting hat, add that into the mix and really make it bigger. One of the people I'm coaching right now is a learning and development expert in banking. And she was around during the mortgage meltdown. And because of regulatory matters, they had to completely retrain all the people who were closing mortgages. And she took a look at it and said, whoa, this is way bigger, because the fines that the bank paid have much more to do with mortgages than just the closing process.
Right.
And so she went back to management, and she actually did a skip level. She talked to her boss, and then her boss said, yeah, go ahead and talk to the C-suite about this. She said, this is a change management process. And so she ended up training not 500 closers, but 5,000 mortgage lenders.
Wow.
At all different levels. So it's just the idea that a lot of times our solutions are so rich, they're so robust, they need to go bigger.
Right.
And it's our job to sell it up the ladder.
Well, and that was what interesting about your story is that her manager allowed her to speak directly to the C-suite instead of her manager saying, what I hear happens most of the time, well, let me go take this to the executive team. And then what I find happens is when that manager of that person whose idea it was takes it to the executive team thinks it's that person presenting's idea and they get the credit for it. And it drives me crazy, and so the things that you like blood, sweat, and tears over, and you gave so much consulting time to, you don't even get credit for it. And it's frustrating to me. And how do you combat that when maybe the manager would have done something differently, in that regard?
Yeah, my last salaried position was training manager at Principal Financial Group in Des Moines. And our division, which was my responsibility, was 600 people. And I created what I thought was extremely clever training that had a basketball theme, and it was compliance training, and we had fouls, and and we had the trainers dressed as coaches or referees with the striped shirts, and it was just fun. It was a lot of fun, and it was compliance training. Right.
It sounds very dull, but then you try to make it fun. I get it.
Yeah. So we made it fun, and somebody at corporate loved it so much that they distributed it to all the other divisions with their own,
spin,
their own content, because they had to change the content for a different division.
Sure.
And so I went to my boss and I said, I am just a little bit insulted that they never even asked if it would be okay to take the theme, to take the way the training's designed and all of that. And he said, don't worry, Catherine, that training has your fingerprints all over it.
Good.
And everybody knows who created it. And that was a company that had 25,000 employees.
Wow.
In downtown Des Moines. And he said, they know, don't you worry your head about that.
Right.
And so I think sometimes we worry too much about, somebody else is going to know and get credit. But you know what? People know where the creativity is coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. I like to end each of my sessions with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And so here we go. Are you ready?
I hope so.
What's the biggest impact someone else has made on you at work?
I had a boss once who promised that he would have my back if I had his. I never forgot it, and I never betrayed that trust.
Awesome. I love that. In regards to bringing more humanity back to the workplace, what is the one thing that you think people can do every day to make a positive impact on the people that they work with? Maybe that's employees, supervisors, even coworkers. What is that one thing that they can do every day?
I think the best thing you can do for your coworkers is to compliment them. I think every time you have a meeting and it was a successful meeting, someone needs to be complimented on their facilitation skills. It just goes so far. And especially if you want to get in better with your boss, compliment your boss and tell her what she's doing right and what she's doing really well.
Right.
If you witness, for example, a difficult conversation, you need to tell one of those two parties, you really handled that well.
Right.
And I think that makes a bigger impact on anybody than anything. So it's got to be a sincere compliment, but a compliment.
Right. Not an empty, great meeting, and then you just keep on walking with no eye.
No, you want to say, I think you handled that really well. And I especially like the fact that you said X, because I think that landed just right.
Right. And I talk a lot about leadership training and the things that I do and the workshops I do. So I'm curious what's the one thing that you think managers should do more of, and at what frequency?
I think they need to have more contact. Just more contact. I think once a week is not often enough. I think you can have a once a week, one-to-one, and have a better relationship with your manager. But I think super short voice-to-voice conversations can go a huge way in building intimacy and just friendship and support, mutual support. One of the things I've noticed with I have 5 stepchildren, and each of them has a significant other. So I've got 10 adults in my life, plus my son and his wife. So actually 12 adults in my life I'm trying to keep a great relationship with. And what I find is frequent phone calls actually build relationships better than even face-to-face, because they're more confidential and private. And so I really think leaders need to talk to their people more.
Well said. Thank you, Catherine. That's today's episode. I would like to thank you, my listener, for your time, and our guest, Catherine Jewell, for her contribution to this show. Look out for our next episode on tdaustin.org. Be sure to like our LinkedIn and Facebook pages. And if you would like to be featured on this show, just reach out to podcast@tdaustin.org, or reach out to me on LinkedIn at Melissa Love. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.